My man Damon, welcome to the Mind Shift Podcast. How you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you.
Glad you're here, man. We're going to have what I think is going to be a real rich, deep, emotional conversation. I think the audience listening, there's going to be a lot of audience members listening to this, a lot of our Mind Shift listeners who are going to resonate with various parts of your story and your book. Tell us, first of all, where are you joining us from today?
I am actually joining you from the beautiful city of Los Angeles, California.
LA in the house,
Yes,
LA in the
yes,
house.
yes, yes.
Before we dive into the book, tell everyone a little bit about your business, your background. What do you do professionally down in the LA area?
Well, I own a video production company which covers, specializes in business owners and entrepreneurs, video editing. I'm an FAA licensed drone instructor and pilot, and like I said, I love editing though. So that's what I do.
You know, your work, anyone that's not familiar with Damon's work, we're going to link up where to find him. But Purpose Services, he does, when you talk about drone work, this guy here, he he flies these drones around here like it's like stealth. I mean, how did you get interested in drones before we go off it? How did you get interested in drones?
Well, being the editor, I wanted to make sure that my videos had a cinematic look to them. And I try not to be jack of all trades, master of none, which is not what I was looking to do. But it gives that whole image that people are looking for. I saw the Hollywood studios how they do it. I said, I can hire people to do this, but I like to learn how to do things. That way I can really know how it's supposed to be done. But that rounds out my videos. So that's how I got into drones.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing. If you just follow Damon's Facebook feed, particularly, and you're going to see pieces of his work just living there. So if you're in the LA area and you're an entrepreneur looking to get, and by the way, video is the place to be today. You need to be involved in video to expand your brand, expand your message. It's the lowest cost way to advertise your business. If you think back to television commercials and how much they may have cost, I mean, you can take a video today that Damon creates for you and really expand your brand with really good cost leverage. So anyway, find out more at purposevideoservices.com. Listen, Damon, you wrote this book, Abandonment. Tell us a bit about it.
Well, when this pandemic hit, I had been running from the calling of God to write this book. But when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, I had no excuse. God said, "What's your excuse now? You have nothing but time." So I went ahead and answered that call, and I sat down. And 6 weeks later, after a lot of tears and pain of the past, the book was born. From my past of abandonment. That's where the title came from.
Yeah. You call it the plague of most men. Tell us a bit more about that and that choice of a subtitle.
Well, that choice of subtitle came from the plague of most men is I've been taught that transparency, vulnerability, intimacy, all these words, as a child, I was taught that they were weaknesses. So I realize now that they're strengths. So that's where the subtitle came from. With people saying that if you cry, you're weak, and all these other things. Now I realize those are the things that have that were keeping me bound.
Yeah. What changed your mind about that? What obviously we've grown, we've learned, we've matured, but what shifted your mind about the idea that if you cry, you're weak and things of that nature? What was the shift for you?
Well, the shift, I always have to say, and if anybody hasn't heard me speak before, my wife of just over 20 years, because of her, I'm the man that I am today because of her prayers. Because, of a praying grandmother, mother, and my wife, she's the one that taught me and a living example of exactly what transparency, vulnerability, intimacy, and all these things that are true. She shared with me that transparency is what really connects me with her, and now it resonates with her because she sees she sees my heart, and that's the peace that I have now.
Gotcha. Gotcha. You know, this obviously has been many, many years in coming, right? And so when we think about talk a little bit about your areas of abandonment, as much as you would care to share, the things that brought you through. What, in this show we talk about moments of breakdown that help us lead to the breakthroughs, right? And so I think that this book comes off the second channel, which is that breakdown to breakthrough. We always talk about inspiration to realization, breakdown to breakthrough. Talk to us a little bit about some of those breakdown moments where that really shaped the underpinnings of this book.
Well, I was always I became an angry child because of the absence of my father, but I could never pinpoint why I was so angry and rageful. Growing up, I was the bullied kid back in the day, just because I was quiet and shy. People took advantage of that. So over the years, I just became angrier, I should say, all through my early childhood. And once I joined the military, I was military police. And the thing about it is, I didn't know how to address the anger. So I started hitting the weights, start getting a little size on me. So how that's significant is the fact that that little boy, even though I was a man, I was a little boy inside that had retreated inside because people started to react a certain way because of my body frame. So I began to isolate myself. So fast forward to the day, the thing about it is the fact that my father was absent. And the thing, with him is that I just had, the anger came from him being absent in my life. So that's where the abandonment feeling, really had its foundation.
Gotcha. When you say that you didn't know how to, so what, as you think about that anger that was building up inside of you, because I know you're a Christ follower. When or where or what caused or helped change that anger into love?
Well, 4 years ago, I can tell you, 2017, Purpose Video Services didn't exist. I stepped out on faith because there was always a calling within me that I kept ignoring because I kept allowing fear to stop me. And being a follower of Christ, we know fear is, we're supposed to be about love, power, and a sound mind. I don't serve a God of fear. So, 20 years, over 20 years of commercial, residential, real estate broker, mortgage broker, and all these other things, which is great, but it's just something that I was holding on to because I was afraid to step forward and step out. When I look at how things transpired for me, or the change that came, 2017, I just said, you know what, I have to step out on faith, and that began with just going to a book signing. But if you go back prior to that, my initial change, when I got, 2001 was a big year, because I got married in January of '01, February of '01 I accepted Christ into my heart, and then March of '01 I filed personal and business bankruptcy. It wasn't the fact that I had to, it was just the fact that, I had accumulated a certain amount of wealth, but I didn't have any peace within me. But God had blessed me with such a wonderful woman who was my helpmate. And if those that are not familiar with how the scripture is written, a helpmate is our helper. She's helped me meet the expectations of what God has always intended me to be. But I didn't recognize that because I had never had a kingdom man in my life, and the difference between a kingdom man and a male with the body parts, and that's not in judgment, but the thing is that I was thinking that I was a man because I had the body parts, but that didn't make me the man, but I had never had a man teaching me how to become a man. So the change began, when I accepted Christ in '01. But prior to that, of course, was the fact that my grandmother had been praying for me, my mother had been praying for me, but God had sent me a woman that had always, she was created for me, basically, and that was the turn, that was the beginning of the change. But fast forward to '08, when the market in real estate dropped, I actually closed my real estate company at the time. So what that prompted me to do is kind of take a year off. And my mother, she was my office manager at the time. The turning point came when I drove her down to Texas, and by chance, my father, he had passed 4 years prior. I was led to go to his grave, and I didn't know why. I said, God, why am I at this guy's grave? We didn't even have a relationship. He said, you need to forgive him. And I basically flat out said, no, I won't do it. And I finally submitted at the grave, and I forgave him. I'm not going to say it was a magical transformation in that moment, but that was the beginning of my heart opening up. And once I forgave him, I turned the prayer right around to me and said, you know what, Lord, forgive me for the pain and suffering that I caused because of my anger, my rage, my abandonment, and everything that, I perceived, in my past. So going forward and fast forward to today, the anger and the rage, there's still a hint there. But the big difference now is that I've been able to transform that through Christ into a righteous anger for what's right, for those things that that most people won't say anything about. I'll stand up for the underdog, the person that people that may be getting picked on, that the people that may not have a voice, they might not have the courage to stand up for themselves. So that was a turning point, and that's kind of like a miniature timeline of how I've been transformed through Christ. Even though the anger was an anchor for me back in the day, now it's more like a foundation of what Christ has me doing.
Wow. Wow. I love the part about the aspect of forgiveness. You and I share a common, not a common, but we both have abandonment in our lives in some way, shape, or form. Many listeners to the show have abandonment, and whether that is a fatherly figure, which is in the context here, it is. There's all sorts of abandonment, and like you said, you pick up this anger, this resentment, and it really, we all have a unique gift for to do things in this world. When did you talk about the development of your understanding and belief in your unique gift?
Well, when the market dropped in '08, I mentioned that I took a year off and went down to Texas. But when I came back, I realized that I had been just existing, and I say that because I felt an emptiness, but I didn't have the courage to step forward and act upon what I knew was within me. I've always been a creative from birth. A lot of the things I've done in the past, painting at an early age, all these various things that I didn't put a finger on. DJing back in the day, which is the foundation of my audio, and editing now. But everything that's transpired up to this point is because I grasped the creativity that's within me, because I got to a point and didn't realize I was depressed. I was severely depressed, so I took a job. And, I still kept my real estate license and helped a few people here and there, but I was depressed. I still, I'm that person that will keep the roof over my family's head. So I took an armed security job at the military processing station in El Segundo. So for 9 years, I stayed on that job. And the thing is, God allowed it to become so uncomfortable to a point where I felt like I was stepping outside of my character. I said, Lord, I don't want to bring discredit upon you. So December 21st of 2017, that's when I quit the job and I stepped out on faith with just my VA disability, which is about $260 a month. It wasn't about the money, but it was about the peace of mind that I knew I had to pursue this gift that was within me. And that gift is tied to Proverbs 18:16. Your gift will make room for you and bring you before the great. So the thing about that is that I began to understand that as I began to exercise the gift, I was still trying to hold on to doing real estate and video production. And don't get me wrong, I still have my real estate license, but my main focus, it stopped being money. It started just being, so you know what, Lord, what would you have me do? I want to exercise this gift. And so once I began to focus on the gift, the doors began to open. My needs have already been taken care of. I thought about, the scripture that talks about what you worried about tomorrow, for today has enough trouble of its own. So I had to stop assuming that I would wake up tomorrow. Some people would say that that's morbid in their mind, but I said, you know what, that's real. I had to start realizing that I had to live each day as if it were my last, and stop putting off what I can do today until tomorrow. Stop being anchored to the past and just exercising the gift and moving forward. So as I began to exercise the gift, I didn't realize the significance of the gift of editing, which is creativity. I didn't realize that, but so many people were like, wow, you love editing? I said, I love the creative aspect of creating something that never existed. And, being a servant, which is another scripture I talk about is Colossians 3:23 that talks about, in whatever I do, I'm going to work at it with all my heart as if I'm working for God and not man. So in other words,
Yes.
the peace that I have within me, it surpasses all worldly understanding. So each day I'm allowed to wake. That's the peace in knowing that I'm operating in a purpose that God has always intended for me. It's nothing new. It's just something that I had to choose to step forward and start exercising.
We having church up in here. Can I get an amen?
Yes,
in
sir.
Just, I love your man. You're hitting on some wonderful, wonderful, wonderful scriptures. Just amazing, right? But if you really think about it, I mean, I love the fact that what I'm hearing you say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is you went from a state where you were relying on what your eyes saw in the world to essentially cause or create or framework your level of pain. You chose to turn your eyes away from that, turn it to the Lord, and look at the scriptures, look at the words, and apply that to, again, the openness and understanding of this unique gift. And I know you talk a little bit about getting past your fear, right? And it isn't that you weren't creative all your life, because you've been creative all your life, but you decided, hey, I need to get past this fear and confidently step out into my level of greatness. And I love the other thing you said too, which is servanthood, right? Servanthood. The
Right.
greatest among us will serve, right? Is what it says.
Right.
That's what Jesus came to do. He was the greatest servant of them all.
Right.
And I know the first time we had a chance to meet, we were down in, if I'm not mistaken, we were down in Ontario. We met at a friend of ours conference and seminar event.
Yes.
And I know we had a chance to meet then, and then we talked many times afterwards. We've known each other for a while, and I can say that what I really appreciate about you is just this stern path of today now moments, which I just heard you say as well, which is, I'm only going to worry about this moment, because I'm not going to worry about what could possibly maybe happen tomorrow or in the future. So it's amazing. And I want to ask about, what would you say to the person who is your former angry self? Talk to that person for just a little bit. I think you've spoken a little bit about, but I want you to speak into the person who's listening to this right now, who is angry about some level of abandonment. Maybe it was a spouse or significant other. Maybe it was a father. Maybe it was a brother or sister or someone. Maybe it was a corporate scenario where they felt abandoned by a role or a job that they'd given their life to. Speak into that person's life for a second.
When it comes to abandonment, I could share the fact that about my story in that regard is the fact that I didn't know how to pinpoint the feelings that I was experiencing. The anger and the rage. I'm surprised that I'm even able to sit here and speak with you, because I'm supposed to be dead or in prison. That's just the bottom line. So God had a calling and a covering over me, so that I could get to this point where I can share with anybody that's going through anything. And of course, you and I both know the acronym of fear has many different meanings to many people. You can either face everything and run, but I chose to face everything and rise. The false evidence that appears real, false evidence that, so it's many of those things that you just shared about. The things that we fear, in most cases, they never materialize. But because of this thing between our ears, and our perceptions, we are our own worst enemies in most cases. But I can say for myself, the fear was so paralyzing. For anybody that's watching this, that fear that you feel, yes, it's going to exist. The fact that, even if you're Christian, you're not Christian, the thing about it is that we can't let that fear paralyze us. And you have to let it propel us in the direction that we know that's calling us from deep within. And like we kind of briefly mentioned about, we can't go with what we see. We have to step past that, if we want to make a change for our lives, because it's not killing the people that we're angry at, it's killing us. And that was the greatest thing that I realized, that it was killing me. And the thing I didn't realize about forgiveness, I always thought it was about, no, they did this to me, so I'm not going to. No, it was me in bondage. The people that I was angry with, mainly my father, he wasn't thinking about me. Sadly, that's just truth. Once I decided to accept the truth and forgive him, I let him go. That way I could move on and begin to see the things that God has always had before me, because he said, if you don't forgive your brother here, how can I forgive you, when I'm sitting next to my father? So through my wife, I have to bring her in, because without her, I would not have been brought into the truth of what it meant. God knew I needed her in my life, because without her, we wouldn't be sitting here again, because of the fear and the rage and everything, because the bullying is what made me so angry. Because once I became a grown man, I started saying, if anybody looked at me a certain way, I would make sure that they're not going to hurt me, in some kind of way, which in all aspects, that was just my child inside reacting, instead of responding from a mature standpoint as a Christian, not just a Christian male just trying to get by. Like I said, not in judgment, but in observation. That's this real talk. But for anybody that's in fear, I would just encourage you, to, if you don't have a relationship with God, specifically Christ, I would recommend that you would open your heart. What kept me from seeing God was the people that were saying that they were of him, but the scriptures were totally opposite from what the actions that I saw. So that kept me from seeing God, mainly because the enemy knew that I was looking at people and not God. But once I was able to separate people from God, I realized it was never about them. It was always about my relationship with him. That's when my eyes began to open, back at the grave, when I had to forgive my father. God was like, I can't advance you forward until you forgive him, because that anger and hatred in your heart is not going to be fruitful for the kingdom. So I don't preach at anybody, but at the same time, that's the freedom that I've experienced because of the road down, the path, through the fear valley, I should say. But I would encourage anybody to seek God. That way he can give a greater understanding for them in their path.
Yeah, I mean, well said, well said. I think, the old adage is known to most, and that is the truth shall set you free. But I want to just second what you've said about forgiveness. I believe forgiveness is one of the greatest superpowers available to us in our experience. And I think wrong, or for whatever reason that those feelings are there, they've moved on. And if you're still harnessing all that energy, you're just doing it about you. I love the way you said it. It's true. Because your experience shaped your experience as a father.
Darrell, do me a favor and repeat that one more time. I was cut off on that last part.
Okay, sure. You're a father now.
Correct.
And I'm interested in knowing how your experience, your life experience growing up with abandonment has shaped your purpose and direction as a father.
You'll find that I'm very transparent and open. When my wife and I got married, she had 2 daughters. I had a son from a previous marriage. I don't believe in the, this is my stepdaughter, my stepson, whoever. They were my children. So for me, I was a terrible father only because I didn't know how to be a father. And I don't beat myself up, because God has forgiven me for the things, that I've done in the past. It wasn't that I was physically abusive, but the mental abuse, it can be just as bad. So I was a child inside of a man's body, not knowing how to become a man, because I didn't have a kingdom man example in my life. And any men that came around me, they themselves, unfortunately, they didn't exude the I didn't have the attributes of a kingdom man. Now I realize what that term is that it's a man that's chosen to come into the lordship of Jesus Christ, not just go to church. It's like, you know what, I've agreed to be in alignment with God. God is over Christ, Christ is over man, man is over woman, and that's not the Lord over a woman. So many people take that wrong. But for me, with my family, my wife had a name for me. It was I was either grizzly bear or I was teddy bear. But early in our marriage, I was just a child. And when it was, the garage door would open. Long story short, they'd be sitting on the couch, and it was like, okay, is he a grizzly bear today, or is he a teddy bear? And I attribute that to the fact that I was so immature inside, but God knew I needed my wife to help me grow up, But because of her patience, because of her trust in God, God knew I needed somebody that was already grounded in Him in order to deal with this child. So the big guy that people saw, and the big guy you see on this picture back here, was a child inside, because I was still hiding, protecting that little child inside. So that made me not even understand the steps or the path that I needed to take to become a good husband, a good father. I thought I was going to be one, but that was the beginning stages of peeling back the onion of all of the issues of this male that needed to be transformed into a kingdom man. Almost 20 years in January, over 20 years in January, 2 years ago, it was like I finally really started awakening, saying, you know what, I need to stop not wanting to take responsibility and step forward and step into the role of being a father, being a husband, being a mentor, that's always been within me, but I didn't have the courage to. But once I realized the damage, the collateral damage, when I looked around of not being a father and so forth, and like I said, when I forgave my father back in '08, it's been a process. But I just got tired of not seeing the changes that I wanted to just happen, but I didn't realize I had to take some action. So I began to be that person that's always about taking action and not sitting back watching and letting it happen. I said, you know what, I got to make it happen, whatever it looks like. And I reprioritized and made sure my family is first. Of course, God first, but my family is priority. It's not about business or anything like that. When I wake, I got to make sure my family's taken care of first. Being about my Father's business, and I think my Father, that's my Father in heaven. But being that male as a father, I was, in their mind, they were okay with me, but I knew I wasn't living up to the potential that I felt within me, but I felt lost. I had a lot of males around me, but when I look at it as far as like with my father, when I forgave him, I didn't understand that he didn't know how to be a father because he had never been taught how to be a father. So that was part of my forgiveness, but I didn't realize it at that time. That didn't come until I wrote this book, because there was still so many dark secret places within me that I didn't even realize that needed to come to the surface in order for me to begin to continue to heal, so that I could be in perfect alignment with what God needs me to be, instead of what I just want to be and just to exist. I didn't want to go to my grave with all the gift and my talents inside, and they standing over me at my grave saying, you know what, we wanted to be exercised, but you didn't expose us to the world so that you could serve others. You let fear paralyze you instead of pushing you in that direction. So being a father, now I realize, in being a grandfather, it's so powerful. I got a 26, 28, and a 30-year-old, you know what I mean, by the grace of God.
Yeah.
And that's what's made it so great for me.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Club Grandpa is special. I don't know. I never in my goals and dreams vision board, did I ever have the joy of being a grandpa. And let me tell you, it is absolutely incredible. It hits you in just ways that just don't make any kind of sense. So,
right.
I appreciate, I want to say I appreciate your transparency. I really appreciate your honesty. And I think that's something that is missing in men. And I do agree with you. Look, I've grown up with similar ideologies, don't cry, man up, and there's it's not to say those words don't mean step up and pull up your buckle your belt and step into it. But
right.
At the end of the day, it is okay to not be okay. And it's okay for us men to say that we're not okay, so that we can look to one of our brothers and sisters to say, look, I got you. And I love how you've edified your wife and her her maturity, her spiritual maturity, and the way you've elevated the fact that God knew you needed her. And I love the fact that you give her so much credit for that, and God put her in your life. And what is her name? You haven't shared her name. If that's okay, you
That's
share
okay.
it here or no?
Yeah, my wife is, her name is Deborah, and that's the beautiful part about um, 19 into 20 years. I didn't realize my best friend was sitting right next to me. When I got married in '01, the words, we say the words, yeah, I didn't say the words, in front of the preacher just to say them, but I really didn't understand what that meant because I had never really had anybody was my best friend. So about a year ago or so, I sat her on the couch. I said, you know what? I apologize for not being your best friend all these years. I didn't say I was your best friend mainly because I knew I wasn't instinctively behaving like a best friend should. So, at that moment, we just shared tears together, and that's the thing about it, being so open now that I feel that I can share, about my wonderful wife who was created just for me to help me be shaped into the man that God needs me to be a more effective soldier, for Him.
Okay, so we're seem like we're in the same space.
Yeah, it does. It seems like we're.
Let's go for it.
Got you.
Okay, so I'm gonna reframe the question that was sort of the tail end where I lost you. So I'm gonna reframe the question of, about your wife and ask I'd asked you, did you want to share her name, and I did lose you shortly thereafter as you were going into that brief story. So I'll set that up, but let me hit the start recording. It'll do a little countdown, and I'll go in with the last couple of questions.
Got you.
Damon, I love the way you honor your wife in this conversation about how God brought her and knew she was the one for you. First of all, can you share her name? What's your wife's name?
Her name is Deborah. The queen that was created just for me.
Deborah, we want to send a shout out. Shout out to Deborah for taking care of our brother Damon. Let's shout out to Deborah. I want to ask this question, and there's someone listening. There's plenty of people listening to this who have seen abandonment in their lives, as we've talked about a little bit earlier, and maybe they don't have a kingdom man to rely on. You transition now and eloquently have talked about 2001 to 2008, a moment of forgiveness for your father, to 2017, stepping out in faith and facing those fears and realizing that your gift was not being presented in this world. What advice do you give the person today who also, first of all, I know you want them to read the book, right? Abandonment in 2020.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Where can they find the book? Let's talk about that real quick.
They can find the book on Amazon, but if you go to abandonment2020.net, they're going to be able to see the actual trailer, the book release video, and just a lot of the pictures of people that have already purchased the book and have been basically blessed and encouraged.
Got it. One last word of advice for the person who hasn't got the book yet. They've listened to you talk. They don't have that kingdom man who they can rely on. What words of advice would you give them, even before they pick up the book, to forgive, release the anger, and step into their greatness?
You said it right there. Forgiveness is the foundation of everything. And that's the hardest part for most of us because we want to hold on to something that we should have never had within us anyway. But forgiveness is the foundation of anything. It doesn't matter if that person forgives, or reciprocates. It's to release you from whatever pain and suffering, whatever that might look like. It's not discounting what you've gone through and what you continue to go through. So my encouragement would be to, if you don't have a relationship with God, specifically Jesus Christ, I would seek Him first and His kingdom, and all other things will be added unto you. So for your own research, Matthew 6:33, I would open that scripture and then just let it resonate with you. That's my story. That's my testimony. That would be the first place that I would start. Forgiveness, but trust God. If you don't have a relationship with him, that's the first step that I would advise, because I'm just a man that breathes air just like you, or a woman, but at the same time, just trust him. Not look at people. There's going to be a lot of people in your life that are around you. It could be your family, your so-called friends, acquaintances and so forth. But the most important person you got to look at is, when you look in that mirror, you got to ask yourself, am I operating in the gift or the creativity? Am I operating in the purpose that I was created for? And if you don't know that answer, I didn't know. Don't be discouraged. It's in you. Stop listening to the voices within you and outside of you that don't have your best interest. Get in a quiet place and seek God, and he will give you the direction. Be encouraged.
Wow. Thank you for encouraging those listening. If you're listening to this, take these words for heart. You also want to pick up this book if you've been in a situation that resonates. A lot of times when we're going through things in life, we think we're the only one. We're the only one. No one can really understand my story. And while all of the narrative may not be the same, the story of pain, the feelings, the emotions, the facts, they're all crosshairs in this fabric of life that we go through. And so much there is available for you. So I really encourage you, if you're listening to this show right now, you've listened to Damon talk about this book, abandonment2020.net. Anywhere you can find it on Amazon, abandonment2020.net at his website. And then for those listening that are also don't sleep on his video skills, y'all. Don't sleep on this man's video skills. If you're an entrepreneur in the LA area, and I'm sure Damon, if the situation was right, he'd probably come to you, because I live in Vegas and I know we've discussed collaboration as well. So Damon, I want to thank you for being on the show, but before I let you go, one last question, and that is, if for whatever reason today was your last day on this beautiful planet that we are on, what would you want people to remember you for?
Servanthood.
I love it. Damon, thank you for being on the Mind Shift Podcast. Hopefully have you back in the future.
All right. Thank you.